All right. Well, it's a good morning to you, and we're up here on top of Mount Shasta, as usual. We are watching, however, a small snowstorm roll in over the top of us as I speak. Today, as I was coming up, I was sort of wondering what it was that I would talk about, and usually, by last month's tape of being aware of the obvious, you know, I'm conscious of all of the things as I come up here in the morning to do my devotion and things of that nature. As I look for the material, I see what it is that, you know, would be happening with all of us, so that we all interlock, we all interplay, so that the examples that I use have some sort of meaning. I've also listened to a few of these tapes, and I'm sort of surprised at different unique things that I hear on them. As such, when I get started on a tape, sometimes I've noticed that grammatically, if you were to transpose this tape, there are a lot of words that are used out of context, and how I should have periods and things, and I know I use the word so often. And I've also noticed that in certain tapes, if it's cool up on top of the mountain, air is thin, and so I breathe a lot, and so I pull in through my nose a lot because air is thin up here. And I've noticed that on tapes, and so I've become conscious of keeping my nose warm so you don't hear these little nostril sounds. Today, coming up, was no exception. Beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful. Just wow, you know, when the first snow kind of lays out and it does her thing, and there has to be a lot of her, however, so that it can actually cover the dirt, you know, because everything's covered with dirt. In other words, the forest is very, very clean, and then as things fall from the air, she sort of covers over with like a blanket of dust, and then as the snow comes, it sort of washes the entire surface down, gives it a good cleaning, takes all the grit that is sort of accumulated over the warmer areas, and kind of dusts the furniture. So it dusts rocks, and it dusts actual dirt, not the dust particle stuff. And there's a cleanliness, and the air is fresh, but it does take a fair amount of snow. So I've come up the mountain a fair amount today, and it is definitely white in the higher elevations. Being in the wrong vehicle, because the roads just completely cover over here, I didn't have snow tires, but I got up as high as I could and then meandered around and noticed that the snow sort of took over the driving for the car as I watched myself head for the edge of a cliff. And I started thinking to myself silly little things like, how come you kept going up when the snow started getting deeper and deeper and you couldn't see the road at all, and you were going uphill and you've got bad street tires? And my thought was, well, you know, I just sort of wanted to do it. And there was a part of me that wanted to go forward constantly. I think it's an urge that is inside of us. Something to push the boundaries. And so in my linear mind, I had evaluated that I had actually taken the car farther than I should have, and I sort of wanted to see what the end result of that was going to be, because I wanted the pristine look, and I was beginning to look out, and actually where I was heading, I was above the cloud line, and I still had some road to go before I could, you know, actually get out and walk somewhere or do whatever. And I thought to myself, well, the car's out of control, but I'm in control. I'm sort of, I'm clear. I'm not in a worried space. I'm not in a concerned space. I know that I've driven past the point of no return. I know that the only thing I can do now is actually reach the top where I might be able to turn a car around, where there's more of a space. And I just kept driving, and I just wasn't even thinking about the material. I was just sort of observing the day. I was observing Dennis, and I was noticing that there was a peace and a calm. Something overriding the word peace and calm, perhaps as you may think of it. Let me sort of give you a feeling. The peace and calm was sort of something like, even though the mind knew the outcome of a certain incident, regardless of anything, the mind had the picture. It had gone too far. However, the essence, the knowingness that at one-ment knew that it was part of the whole, period. And that if it truly trusted in that, it could go past that point and sort of go a little farther. Those seemingly limits that we set upon ourselves, you know, we touch the borderline and we go, oh, well, I'm safe up to here, maybe I shouldn't go any farther. And yet there's a part of us that says, oh, I'll go on, you know, kind of trust. So you go a little farther and you trust. And I observed the end reaction of that trust. I was going a little farther. I started to go into a turn. The car didn't seem to want to do anything I would like it to do, because the snow apparently was too deep, and I come from Cleveland. I've driven in enough snow to sort of just let cars do what they want, knowing that the truth of the matter is, accelerate. When in doubt, in a spin out, accelerate. Then at least you're putting some energy behind the direction you're going, rather than slowing down and with your brake and just going into a skid. So I hung out, and I also noticed that as I was going towards the end of the road, there was no panic involved. There was no actually there was nothing involved. I just sort of observed. I was there for the ride. I had instinct, naturally. I've driven in the snow. I used to race cars. I put all of the intelligence into one aspect, and I noticed that my body function was calm, maintained. It evaluated the situation. If I did indeed go over the end, it was to such a degree that the car wasn't coming back. I probably could get out, but it was a steeper action. After all, this is a mountain, and I didn't even go that far ahead. That was almost like 2 to 3 seconds ahead when I would go shooting off the edge of the cliff. I sort of didn't even notice going that far in time, even, you know, guiding the path of what I would normally do. And instead, I allowed the physical structure to go on its own, I don't know, not even instinct. I would call it more of an automatic pilot. And I, as an essence, just trusted and just sort of let go. And I noticed that the body started to accelerate. It was its normal thing to do. It then intentionally skidded the front end, and noticed that the wheel sort of spun, and just kind of let it go, and then noticed that there was a probability of a side spin, and so I just kind of glided with it and just really trusted and tuned into the one. And then I noticed that the back end started coming around on me, and I figured, wow, this is really incredible. I can actually point the car in the other direction and come out of the spin and even be better off than anything I could have possibly done with my own instinctual material in driving a car in the snow and spinning it out intentionally and moving it and plowing this and turning that way and throwing it in a backspin and doing all of the things that I normally would know what to do. And I noticed that I had trusted in, I don't know, something. God, naturally. What do you mean I don't know? I trusted in my totality. And I really trusted in it lately because as I've been noticing, I'm allowing my personality more of a retrospect, something that it normally wouldn't have done before, even in its crazier moments. And I'm noticing that by just feeling at ease and trusting and moving, boy, it's incredible. The action of the car, the action of my physicalness, ended me up in the absolute best possible position. And so here we are doing the tape. I also noticed that had I had that situation happen before, being a consciousness junkie that I am, I would have definitely pumped the adrenaline intentionally, naturally, because I could have said to myself, woo, this is scary, and that's all you really need to do to start dumping chemicals into the body. Yes, I think I'm going to shoot right over this cliff. And, you know, a little intent into the brain, and bingo, dumpo, all sorts of chemicals into the body. Now, I also know that when the car would have smoothed itself out, because one knows when one stays in every moment in time that one is really the totality. And if it trusts and learns and expresses and experiences, it can really grow itself. And so I did. And I would have in the past. Now in the past, we would have called it running the razor's edge. And as the car would have come to a stop, all of that adrenaline that would have been full blasted into my system, I would have not gone into fear. I would have shut the fear off. Those little rushes, you know, like, oh wow, what if, 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 what if? I wouldn't even have thought of that. I would have sat back and relaxed, and I would have let that adrenaline run through my body. Oh, I'll tell you, I would have let it run through my body, and I would have just sat there and rushed my brains out, and I would have just sat there and said, I love you, God, I love you, God, I love you, God, I love you, God, and just used it to the max. Now, for that little rush and running the edge, there was a certain taste of different things within that chemical push, sort of like a little taste of fear for a split second or two, a taste and push of anxiety for a moment or two, a taste or feel of all of those little things that leave bad tastes in our mouth, but we're going for that consciousness rush. Now, that was what I would have done in the past. What I observed doing this time was sort of letting the divine take over. I didn't count on Dennis, the race car driver, to pull me out of it. I didn't count on Dennis, the intellect, to know exactly what to do and exactly when to accelerate. I didn't count on Dennis, the metaphysician, master, who would have taken control had we just gone shooting over the end, which is also a part of our personality in retrospects. I actually just allowed myself the totality to express itself, which means I didn't drop a single chemical into my system. And I noticed that I got the absolute best out of what there was. And I stayed calm and peaceful, the words that I started out with. I also noticed that there was a tremendous amount of joy in watching myself express myself as the whole, to trust oneself, and to know that yes, I could have slipped into any one of those personalities, and I could have Dennis the race car driver, Dennis the intellect, Dennis the master, Dennis the this, Dennis the that. But what I slipped into was the expression of the divine. I was totally amazed as a personality, like that part that listens to somebody when they're speaking very well or clearly. That part that sits inside and sort of analyzes all of the things that is coming through and trying to understand how in retrospect it fits to themselves. That part, that personality, just sort of sat there and watched as the physical and the mental and the spiritual Each did their part rather than taking their part in the split seconds of time. Each allowed themselves to be as oneness, and all, in retrospect, being time, just kind of flowed through it all and ended up in the possibly in the best, most perfect position. Flowing in calmness. I've worked on calmness. This is probably something that I've never spoke about. I've worked on calmness for years. Years and years and years. Because as a personality, I noticed that I had times of erraticalness. Erraticalness meaning I would lose my temper, and I would really get bummed out. I would actually get pissed off at times, and I would yell, and I would scream. Now, I've actually been working on this since my mother pointed it out to me, probably when I was at the age of 12 or 13. And I've listened to the word a zillion times. And naturally, as we grow older, words change, because we start piling up so many other aspects and avenues and concepts on a word and definitions on a word and what it means to you because of the experiences that you have had with a word. And so calmness has kind of changes in retrospect for me over the millenniums in this time, as has the word humility. Because I don't think humility is even a word that can be understood. It's something, humility is something that you understand when you touch the limitlessness of yourself. You know, it's not this person who walks around with their head bowed all the time. It's not a person who doesn't speak at all, and because he is in such a pious aspect that he doesn't want to say the slightest word that would put the world in an improper action. Although, if it's done in piousness, that could be an explanation. Humbleness is really seeing your totality and being what is going on, and coming from love of all things, and in all retrospect to the divine, doing and reflecting your utmost in your expression within yourself of this wholeness. And somewhere within there is a calmness that I've been searching for. It's a part that I think that we all search for, because within this calmness we find ourselves. In this calmness there is no rush to be something or someone, but there is an experience of something in the moment that you exist in that brings you peace. There is nothing in the external world in that moment that is interfering with you being the divine. And flowing in it for more than just a moment, for what we would consider a length of time, flowing in a calmness that could last, like even during an experience as the car spins out of the control and you let it go and you allow a beingness to take over, and you watch from all of the different parts of yourself that stay within a calmness and guide a vehicle, or guide you, because the vehicles are you, through a day. Even though the day throws you many unusual curves, like the back tires break free. I'm sure you can put that in retrospect to your day as part of your essence snaps free. And all of a sudden it's taken an avenue it's never chartered before. Somebody says something to you and you're not sure how to deal with it. And then you pump the brakes and you hit the accelerator and you push in the clutch and you do all of the things in that moment. And you trust in yourself and you notice that the physicalness just does a calmness and it just follows those things that it knows how to trust in. Just like you, as in a day you go through your moves that you know how to trust in. You know when to accelerate here and tap the brake there and do the clutch here. Or you know what to say here and how to express it there and how to follow it up with this. Sometimes we do that with a little tension, however. A little panic, because all of a sudden we see a cliff. And we wonder if we can trust ourselves, because if we don't, we're going to shoot off the end. Just like all of a sudden you're in that business meeting or you're saying that thing where you're sticking your neck out and you can plunge yourself over an edge. And yet you just trust and you let yourself express and you watch the intelligence as it comes through. And how it does things to overlook the pushing of the brakes and the accelerating and the trusting. And you look to the brain and you say to the brain, hey, let's not get involved with this. There is a part of us that can trust. There is a part of us that knows. There is a part of us that must reach out. And allow itself to just be. And then there's that calmness. Even when the panic might be to go for a break or to hit the accelerator. Or there might be that panic that goes into the slide where you know you can pump yourself up into a rush and go in there and surge into a business meeting and pump yourself up on that adrenaline. Instead of just trusting in yourself and counting on the overall. Allowing the fear not to come through in different avenues, and then all of a sudden, all your worstest fears are behind you. And there you sit on the perfect path, ready to continue with absolutely no problems ahead of you. And a calmness like you have never experienced. Not that hyper adrenaline push that us run the edge junkies go for, but a calmness. See, what I can relate to you is experiences that I have as Dennis, the personality, and also as a being seeing itself as the whole, trusting itself as the whole, and sharing itself as the whole. With those everyday experiences that might reflect to you so that you can use a feeling or a sense. You know, calmness. Use calmness for the month. Get into it. Every time that temper goes to shoot out, or that energy you go to shoot out, trust and sit back and relax and trust yourself to do the right thing. Instead of going for that chemical rush. When you see yourself sitting on the edge, hey, relax. Trust yourself. Learn how to trust the whole. You've put yourself in that position. We all put ourselves in the positions that we are in because this is how we've grown. These are the tools we use to grow. Let's use calmness as a tool to grow. Let's trust in ourselves. Let's not run a car towards the edge of a cliff immediately, but let us just, so to speak, begin to test the boundaries and the limits of ourselves in calmness. Let us just begin to search just a little farther. Let's use this calmness. Let's start testing calmness as another major lesson for this month. along with all of the other things that we've been learning and growing with, let's use calmness. And let's use a cleansing and calmness together. Let's cleanse the body of not having to use those energy pumps. You know, when we get into situations, sometimes we lose our temper and we get into anger. Now, anger is a chemical pump. Adrenaline is a chemical pump. All of those things are a chemical pump. Each, naturally, is a little cleaner than the other. But why use them at all? When things come up that can throw us out of a calmness, let's look at the situation and know that regardless what the scenario looks like, we can do this in calmness. And instead of letting the chemicals or the rushes go through us, because that's what we've used in the past perhaps, when we've seen that cliff coming, although we've intellectually known we could pull ourselves out of it, we've intuitively known we could save ourselves, if the physical unit couldn't some sort of come up with a physical miracle, because it is a race car driver, and it is a damn good one, and it is a master, and it could pull it out in the last minute, and it is an intelligent being, and it can learn how to apply the brakes and make the turn at the last split second, and it can do all of those things. But let's do these things in a state of calmness and trusting the whole and seeing where it goes. If you know you can save your act in any situation that comes up during the day, why don't you trust yourself in the new creations of your concepts? And allow calmness to start becoming part of your concept. See, these 12 months are designed to give you something each month so that you can grow with it. And now start to use calmness. Calmness and trusting in the whole. See, right now I'm looking outside and it's snowing. And it's beautiful white. And I'm using the purity of this to sort of use the calmness to know that in calmness there is a purity. There's no need for rushes. There's no need for pressures. There's no need for those things that some of us, as we kind of, push ourselves to the limits, where suffering might kind of get involved, where we run those chemicals through our bodies and we run those angers, we can let these things go through calmness. What I'm going to do is shoot ahead on this tape now and go to the other side, and I'll meet you over there. Thanks. Alright, well, hello there. Yes, I've gotten to the other side, made a few adjustments, put it onto dictate because it's snowing real hard now, and so I didn't want all of the background noise coming through, and it was just a lot of giant hail balls hitting the top of the vehicle. So I'm going to shift over here. Now, I'm staying with calmness, and I'm going to have to